Well, welcome back to the homestead. In the last episode, we had taken this tub and we had stripped all the paint off the outside. And then I took a grinder with a 40 grit flap wheel and ground down any high spots in the casting. Then once I had gotten all the paint and the high spots off, we covered it with a coat of primer just to keep it from rusting again. And after that, I came through with some Bondo and did a skim coat of Bondo on the exterior of the tub. So once I sand this Bondo down, the exterior of the tub will be ready to paint. But the epoxy paint that I'm going to be using for this tub has to have 70 degrees or warmer 3 days in a row, and I don't have that right now where I'm doing this. So we're going to have to wait to do this until the weather warms up just a little bit. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start working on these feet. So you can see I've removed the paint from the feet, and you can see a little bit more of the detail in the casting now. A lot of these lines in the casting were basically filled in with paint, and you couldn't really see any of the detail on the feet. So in order to avoid that, when I repaint these, instead of using the fairly thick self-leveling paint that I'm going to use on the exterior of the tub, I want to use a couple of coats of spray paint to do these. And I'd like to finish these in a oil rub bronze finish. So I don't know if this is going to work, but my idea is I'm going to paint these feet with a copper colored paint and let that dry. And after that's set up, I'm going to come back with a oil rub bronze spray paint and spray them. And as that oil rub bronze is setting up, I'm just going to lightly go through and rub across some of these high spots to remove some of that paint and let the copper show through. So I'm hoping that's going to turn out well. I'm not really sure. We may have to go back and redo it after I try this, but that's what I want to try on it at any rate. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now the paint that I'm going to be using is a Rust-Oleum spray paint. It's a paint and primer all in one. And the color is going to be this aged copper for the base coat. So let's go ahead and put a few coats of that on and see what that looks like. Alright, so while I'm waiting for the copper paint on the legs to dry, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the body filler on this exterior of the tub. And I'm just going to take my orbital sander with some 40 grit and start knocking it down. All right, so what I'm going to use to recoat this tub is ekopel, which is a 2-part epoxy tub paint. It comes with your primary medium here. It'll also come with a preloaded syringe full of tint for whatever color you order. And then it's got a Part B hardener. So what the instructions say are you're supposed to take the primary product, add the tint to it, stir that for 5 minutes. Then add the Part B hardener in, stir it for another 5 minutes, let it sit for 10 minutes, stir it again for 1 minute, and then apply it to the tub. And it also says do not use an automatic mixer, so all this has to be done by hand. So let's go ahead and start getting it all mixed up and see if we can get it applied. Alright, so now that Part A and B are mixed for 10 minutes, we're going to cover it back up and we're going to let it sit for 10 minutes. Then we'll stir it for 1 minute and then we can start coating. Alright, so now that it's set for 10 minutes, we're going to uncover it and stir it for another minute and then we can coat it. So now that we've got it mixed up again, it's ready to go ahead and start applying to the tub. Alright, so now that the exterior of the tub is dried for a few days, the finish is nice and hard on it. I'm pretty happy with that. And I've come back and I've tried to do a little work on these legs. Unfortunately, I had some camera trouble and I didn't get any footage of it. But I showed you where I painted a coat of aged copper on all the legs first. And then my plan was I was going to come back with this oil rub bronze color that's on here now. And after I painted it on there, I was just going to rub a little bit of the paint off before it dried to let the copper show through. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. I think maybe if I'd had some solvent, it might have, but the paint was just too tacky to be able to wipe. So then my thought was, well, after the oil rub bronze dries, maybe I can come back with my buffer and just buff some of the high spots and let the copper show through. So I tried that and it did work. Unfortunately, it also dulled the oil rub bronze around those high spots and I didn't like that. So I've just gone back and put a solid coat of oil rub bronze on all of them and I think that we're gonna call that good. So now that the legs are done and the exterior of the tub is done, it's time for me to go ahead and attach the legs back to the tub. To do that, you just take a bolt with a square nut on it and it fits down into these little slots. Unfortunately, one thing I forgot to do whenever I was preparing the exterior of the tub to put the paint on was to make a dam for these little slots. So quite a bit of this epoxy paint went down into the slots and filled them up. And it didn't leave enough room for the nuts to get down in there. So I had to come back and chisel that out. And if all the exterior paint is attached as well as that is attached inside of these little grooves, I think I'm going to be really happy with this finish because it was quite a chore to get it back out of here. So if you do this on the exterior of one of these tubs, make sure you don't let the paint get down into these little notches because it's a chore to get it back out. But at any rate, let's go ahead and bolt these legs on and see if we can get the tub flipped over and see what it looks like. back on its feet and looking at the finish on the exterior of the tub, I couldn't be happier with it. So the next thing I need to do is get the interior of this tub cleaned up and do the same treatment on the interior as we did the exterior. And once we do that, then this tub should be ready to be a focal point for many years to come. But that's going to be in the next episode. So until then, y'all keep checking back.